Hello, it's Tuesday, September 26th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. And what have we got to look forward to tonight in our Sky After Dark? EarthSky.org provides this. Headline, Moon next to Saturn on September 26th. Yep, that's tonight as soon as darkness falls. No matter where you are on Earth, look for the waxing crescent moon. The bright golden light nearby will be the planet Saturn. The moon and Saturn will sink downward toward the sunset point as evening deepens. As seen from across the globe, they'll set beneath your horizon by mid-evening. In other words, your best view of the moon and Saturn together happens at nightfall, while the two beam highest in the sky. Nightfall also presents the best time to view Saturn's gorgeous rings, and if you've got a small telescope lurking somewhere in your basement or attic, dust it off, bring it out. It's often said that Saturn would float on water. That is, if you could find an ocean of water that's wide enough and deep enough to contain it. Why do people say this? That's because Saturn, the sixth planet outward from our sun, has a very low density. In fact, the lowest density of all the planets in our solar system. Saturn's the only planet in our solar system that is less dense than water, having about 70% of its density. So, yes, in theory, Saturn would float on water. On the other hand, it's also been argued that Saturn would break apart and its core would sink in any ocean large enough to hold it. By the way, Bruce McClure asks, do you know which planet in our solar system is the most dense? Yeah, well, it's planet Earth with over 5 times the density of water. But all 4 inner terrestrial planets, those rocky worlds orbiting the sun inside the asteroid belt, are quite dense. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, those 4 outer planets. The gas giants and ice giants orbiting the sun outside the asteroid belt are less dense, although much larger than those inner planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. As usual, EarthSky.org provides a cool chart and a list of the inner planets and their various densities. Oh, by the way, here's a cool fact. In case someone should ask you later during the day, you can provide the answer. What's the density of water? Well, it's 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. You never know when those facts will come in handy. So here's the bottom line. Moon next to Saturn tonight. Get out there and see if you can find those gorgeous rings of Saturn. Here's a story for all you folks listening from down under and everybody else. Headline, after lengthy campaign, Australia gets its own space agency. We grabbed this article from sciencemag.org. It carries a byline for Lee Dayton. Sydney, Australia. Australia was the third nation after the United States and the USSR to build and launch a satellite from its own rocket range. But after the weapons research establishment satellite called RESSAT, that's WRESAT, took to the skies the 29th of November 1967, the country's space efforts dwindled. Australia's last microsatellite, launched from a Japanese facility, died in 2007. Along with Iceland, Australia was one of the only 2 Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development nations without a space agency. But that's about to change. The government announced yesterday at the 68th International Astronautical Congress in Adelaide, Australia, that it will establish a national space agency. The decision caps a year-long campaign to boost Australia's space efforts, led by groups from universities, industry, and government bodies. Quote, the creation of an Australian space agency is very exciting news, end quote, says Michael Brown. He's a Melbourne, Australia-based Monash University astronomer. Here's another quote from astrophysicist and astronomer Lee Spittler of Macquarie University. Quote, the establishment of an Australian space agency is a strong nod of support for the current space sector in Australia. He adds that what is left of the country's space industry operates as a, quote, grassroots movement across a small number of companies, university groups, and the defense sector, end quotes. Australia depends heavily upon foreign-built or operated satellites for communications, remote sensing, and astronomical research. Its share of the $330 billion global space economy is only 0.8%. Despite persistent calls for a national space agency, the current government took no steps until last July, when Arthur Sinodinos, the federal minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, set up an expert review group to study the country's space industry capabilities. To date, the group has received nearly 200 written submissions and held meetings across the country. Facing calls for action last week from the participants at that Adelaide meeting, Acting Industry Minister Michaela Cash announced that the working group will develop a charter for the space agency, a charter that will be included in the wider space industry strategy. It's about time, says astronomer Alan Duffy at Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne. Quote, these announcements come at a special anniversary. It's 50 years since the launch of RESAT, that Weapons Research Establishment satellite. So pretty soon we can expect down under to go up over, shall we say. Apparently there was something going on in the skies over Los Angeles this last Saturday night. This broadcaster missed it entirely, but here's a follow-up story, and it's the mystery solved part. Los Angeles UFO mystery solved. That's the headline. It's from Fox News, their tech department. Here's the story. The mysterious object in the sky above Los Angeles last Saturday night has been identified. Video of this object appeared on Twitter with tags saying, quote, did anyone else in Los Angeles see this tonight in the sky around 11 p.m.? That Twitter tweeter, known as Real Hope Lavelle, also said, Griffith Observatory, what was it? Cool, yet scary. The object, however, was quickly explained, to which Real Hope Lavelle tweeted, oh, okay, mystery solved. And she tells us what it was. It was a rocket from Vandenberg Air Force Base. The United Launch Alliance ULA Atlas V rocket took off from Vandenberg Space Launch Complex 3 at 10:49.47 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It was carrying a payload for the National Reconnaissance Office. Quote, designated NROL-42, the mission is in support of national security, end quote. And that's all that was explained by United Launch Alliance in their press release. Space.com reports that this rocket was carrying a secret spy satellite. Well, quite obviously, the satellite itself is no secret anymore. What its mission is, that is still a mystery. Are you in a mysterious mood? Well, if you are, here's a headline for you. Mysterious readings on United States submarine sonar leads UFO researcher to believe Navy has secret USO program. USO, and that would be unidentified submerged objects. Here's the story. The Mutual UFO Network's chief photo expert, Mark D'Antonio, says he was on a United States Navy submarine when they tracked a very fast-moving object in the ocean. Subsequent responses from Navy personnel lead D'Antonio to believe that the Navy has a secret program regarding unidentified submerged objects, USOs, the underwater equivalent of UFOs. Although much less popular, there are famous USO cases ufologists often reference. One of the most interesting USO stories for Alejandro Rojas is that of his friend Mark D'Antonio. He's heard it several times in D'Antonio's company, and he believes that they've talked about it in one of his many appearances on their Open Minds UFO radio podcast. Mark D'Antonio, besides being an astronomer and a photo expert, among other professional exploits, he's also a model maker. He's had several government contracts to build models. Many of those models require a top-secret clearance. And among these contracts have been projects with the United States Navy. D'Antonio said he was once invited to take a ride on a nuclear submarine, and at one point things got weird. Although D'Antonio has told the story before, it hasn't been featured in the mainstream media until recently. Mark D'Antonio and Alejandro Rojas were both presenters at the recent Devil's Tower UFO Rendezvous in Hewlett, Wyoming, and Emma Perry from the United Kingdom's Sun newspaper was there to write about it. Emma Perry has written several stories stemming from the event, one of them on D'Antonio's USO encounter. Here is what she wrote on Mark D'Antonio's recollection of the USO. This is what he presented at his Devil's Tower lecture. Quote, I was sitting there zoning out a little because I was seasick. And all of a sudden the sonar kid shouts, fast mover, and I'm jolted awake, thinking, what's happening? Is it a torpedo? The executive officer comes out and the operator shows him the path of the object. And the officer says, how fast is that going? And the kid said, several hundred knots. I started to lean forward to listen in, and the officer said, can you confirm it? So he goes to another sonar machine and confirms it wasn't a machine anomaly. It was real. I thought, wow, that is incredible. When the sonar guy asked, what do I do with this? The officer said, log it and dog it. In other words, log it and bury it. End quotes. 4 years later, Mark D'Antonio said he was doing some more contract work for the Navy when he spoke to a senior naval figure about what he saw. He said, quote, I asked him, can you tell me about the fast mover program? End quotes, Mark said. He looked at me and said, quote, sorry, Mac, I can't talk about that program, end quotes. So he basically confirmed to me that the program exists. He said everything without saying anything. What he told me was that USOs are common. We even have a program in place to classify and log and determine the speed of them, and that information goes into a vault, end quotes. So, according to Alejandro Rojas, that's a pretty odd encounter. He's known Mark D'Antonio for a long time. D'Antonio is a fellow who's careful about what he says. He's known for his skeptical perspective, as any good scientist should be. So, at least to Alejandro Rojas, his claims go a long way. Some listeners to this story might respond with, duh, of course the Navy tracks USOs. And others might feel like D'Antonio's claims are too sensational to be believed. But here's what Alejandro Rojas says. I trust D'Antonio for whatever that is worth. If you want to watch Mark D'Antonio and his friend and colleague, that special effects guru Doug Trumbull, talk about their UFO project, you can find footage from their presentation at the International UFO Congress, another event. Here, there'll be a link at ufoheadlinenews.com. Gentle listeners, if you happen to catch yesterday's broadcast, we had that story from Napierville, Illinois, the creature with the orange shorts, the woman wannabe extraterrestrial shapeshifter, and the guy with the Scooby-Doo umbrella. We can't promise a Scooby-Doo umbrella, but it's a sighting from the same location, Napierville, Illinois. Let's read. It's MUFON case number 86924. The date of the sighting is September 11th, 2017. It wasn't reported till September 25th. Here's what the witness provides by way of summary. Loud humming sound that was not drone-like. Sighting specifics give us a viewing distance unknown, an altitude also unknown. The sighting duration was 5 minutes. The object features are reported as unknown, the flight path stationary, and one more unknown, and that was the shape of the object. At the time of this event, the weather went something like this. Maximum temperature, 74 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius. The visibility factors, standard, all of them maximum, mean, and minimum, read at 10 miles, 16 kilometers. There was nothing abnormal about the weather. Here's the event. I got up to use the bathroom at about 1 a.m. in my house. When I was going to the bathroom, I heard what sounded like a loud humming coming from outside the house. It sounded like it was coming from right above the house. This sound lasted for about 5 minutes, and then it faded away. I didn't bother to look because the noise really creeped me out. I was just happy when it stopped. We have heard some creepy noises around here, but this one was really terrifying. The first odd noise we heard was a few years ago during a meteor shower. My daughter woke us up about 2 or 3 in the morning in the fall to see these meteors. So we were out there for a while when we heard a loud screaming coming from the northwest. It scared the hell out of us. My daughter wanted to go have a look, but I made the two of us both go back inside. This humming, though, this noise, this event from right over my house, that was the longest bizarre noise we've heard around here. Interesting, the Scooby-Doo umbrella incident talked about screaming, loud, angry singing from this creature. Some sort of sonic component? We have no clue. Let's head to the Bronx. Here's a...
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Our case, it's 86926, MUFON number-wise. The date of this sighting is the 21st of September. It was reported the 25th of September, both 2017. Here's the summary. Surprise! This was really real. It is real. It's video footage. There are several different video clips. As we recall, the first one begins with Frank Sinatra in the background singing, "Ain't That a Kick in the Head?" It's amazing footage. We have no idea what this fellow was photographing. We got to give you a strong language alert, however, as he was rather excited. Here are the sighting specifics. Viewing distance, 501 feet to 1 mile, eventually over 1 mile. The altitude was unknown. The sighting duration, 50 minutes. The object features are also described as unknown. The flight path, hovering. Oh, yes, it hovers. And then a path with a directional change. They report the shape of this object as star-like. Check out the videos, see what you think. Pretty standard meteorology at the time. Maximum temperature over the Bronx, 79 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius. The minimum temperature, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 22 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility was 10 miles, 16 kilometers, as was the mean visibility and the minimum. And again, nothing abnormal weather-wise. Here's the account. At the time, I was smoking a cigarette looking out the window. Suddenly, a bright star caught my attention. It still wasn't dark outside, so to see a very bright star, you get curious. When this object started moving, I was like, holy moly, what is that? Very surprised, very excited. I've wanted to see a UFO. This was scary, but at the same time, it was a good experience. At the end, I stopped recording because the position my neck was in, it started hurting from looking up so long. And then, suddenly, as it was hovering, this object disappeared, and that was it. Yep, no punchline. Settle back, gentle listeners. Here's a long saga from Seminole, Florida. It's MUFON case number 86832. This sighting took place on the 21st of September and was reported the same day, both in 2017. Here's the summary provided by our witness. I took pictures of a circle disc, shiny orb-like object. It was to the north, 5 to 10 minutes, multiple observers. Yep, photos with this one as well. And you can find those photos later at ufoheadlinenews.com. The sighting specifics offer a viewing distance unknown, an altitude unknown. The sighting duration was 10 minutes. The object features, unknown. The flight path, stationary, and this object was shaped like a circle. Here's the event. Location, Seminole, Florida. Time, 7:30 p.m. I was talking to the neighbor who's living to the north of us. He was out working on his car, replacing his brakes. So we chatted for a while. When he finished putting his brakes on the car and was lowering the jack, the vehicle hit the ground. I leaned over the hood of the vehicle, and I was kind of trying to wrap up our conversation when there was this weird moment where we both watched a regular airplane fly over. This airplane was making a noise, and that's what got my attention. And that's when I saw the object. I said to the neighbor, "Do you see that in the sky?" And I pointed. He was like, "Yes." And then I made a joke, "It's that Planet X," as I didn't think he would know what I was talking about. At this point, the object seemed like a circle, but it was not a perfect circle. It was really shiny, and it seemed to be reflecting the sun. The sun was setting at the time. I was like, "What is that?" He said, "It might be a weather balloon." I didn't think so, and I remembered exactly where my camera was. I just got back from a trip, so I ran back to the house and got my camera. By the time I got back outside, I couldn't see the object, but I just started to take pictures of where I thought I'd seen it. trying to take pictures in relation to the ground. The object was north, but as for the degrees, I'm not sure. If one was really interested, one could look at the pictures and get an exact, I guess. By the time I got the camera, this object wasn't as bright and not as big. I could hardly see it, in fact. And then I picked it up. I had a hard time zooming in on this object, but I got quite a few good pictures. This event only lasted a few minutes. I would say something like 3 to 10 minutes, but I'm not sure. My neighbor and I kept talking. I know he's a little religious, so I didn't press on him too much. And a few minutes later, 2 helicopters came in from the south. I was telling my neighbor that I've heard stories about helicopters after UFO sightings and thought these were military. It was clear the first helicopter that came up from the south was small and not really a military helicopter. It wouldn't hold any type of weight. The neighbor said they're looking for someone. It seemed like they were, but they were looking for something on the ground and not in the air. This helicopter passed us. It was heading somewhat north. That's where we had seen the object. Then the helicopter turned west and headed toward the Gulf of Mexico, where it met a second helicopter. This second helicopter had a light on it, and by this time it was starting to get dark. Both these helicopters then started to travel north in a strange, non-linear path. We live near the Pinellas Trail, and I don't think helicopters were searching or flying that trail, as the trail itself is kind of straight. I'd say these helicopters were in between the trail and the coast, moving north in a non-linear path. I personally couldn't tell if the helicopters were related to this object in the sky. It didn't seem like it, but they were looking for something, and the timing was strange. The airplane we'd seen earlier at the start of this event was just a typical airplane, like a 747 commercial plane. When everything began to die down, I checked my camera. The pictures I zoomed in on, which I attached, convinced me that what I saw was either a weather balloon or something else. And I'm leaning more toward the something else. Later, I started to zoom in on the pictures I took where I originally didn't even see the object, and eventually I found it. I personally do not think this object is from our planet, but I cannot rule out the fact that it could be a weather balloon under some conditions, but I just don't think so. I know I saw something, but what it is I do not know. It was way too early to be a star in the sky, in my opinion, and the object only got darker and ended up going behind the clouds. I'm a college-educated person. I wasn't drunk, and I'm not seeking any fame. I'm just a guy that saw something. I know there's been other more exciting experiences and close encounters that are better stories than mine, but today I saw something in the sky north of me, and I wasn't the only one. And our witness actually signs his name. It's Chris T., we'll just say. And he also says, I have better things to do with my life than this these days. Hell, it's already taken me an hour to write this report and upload everything. Well, we thank you for your time, Chris T., and your report. It's cool. If you want to check it out later, head on over to UFOHeadlineNews.com. Yet another story of witnesses seeing an object and then seeing those helicopters that just don't fly right. We've got to fly right out of here because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at UFOHeadlineNews.com. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.